If you followed me at all for the nearly 5 years I've been doing these reviews, you'll know that the week before Christmas, I usually reviewed a Home Alone game. It just felt natural. Too bad that for the most part, these games weren't very good. But here we are again, with only days left before Christmas Day, and you might be thinking, which Home Alone game am I going to whip out this time? Well, I'm going to be looking at all of the games I haven't touched that I could find. I'm not going to give real in-depth looks to all of them because 1, I didn't spend a huge ton of time on them, and 2, most of them are just different ports of games I previously reviewed. There is one game in here that is pretty different, so I'll go into a little bit more detail on that one, but we'll still take it one game at a time. We'll just call this episode Homealoneapalooza. Huh, that has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? I will say that I probably won't be giving these games individual scores. I just didn't play them enough. I'll just give them a passing or failing recommendation grade. Sound good? Awesome. Let's move on. To start off, we'll look at the remaining Home Alone games that were based off the original movie. We'll do the sequel afterwards. Again, I'm not going to go into movie plots because they were fantastic movies and deserve to be watched at least once. But we'll begin with the Home Alone on Game Boy. It's a port of the SNES Home Alone. Just like that game, you have to run around the mansion, picking up jewelry and other valuables, and then drop them into a safe. I would definitely stick with the SNES version, for many reasons. For one, the graphics just feel off. Kevin has a strange running animation. Is it me, or is he running around the house without a shirt on? What's up with Harry? Did he lose a few years? That just doesn't look like Joe Pesci to me. But perhaps my biggest complaint with the game is that there is no longer any scrolling. You have to travel screen by screen, and the issue lies with the fact that enemies don't wait for you on their own screens. It's very simple. You move screens and fall right into a trap. That's how I got game over, and it's why I stopped playing a game after only a few minutes. I really can't recommend this one, even if you want a Home Alone game on the go. Stick to the SNES one. Next up, the only other original movie-based game I could find, the DOS game. This one took me a while to figure out. First, I thought I was screwed because right from the start you get assaulted with an anti-piracy puzzle. You know the ones from older games, where you had to use the manual or a little card that came with the game to type a character on a certain line. Now, I will say that I typed in a random letter each time, and it worked, so maybe the game was cracked not to need this anymore. Either that or it just wasn't coded right and you literally could pass it without a problem when the game was first released. Oh well. The next thing I noticed is that after the opening credits, you get an intro, and then the game immediately begins. Although maybe I look like a moron, I could not figure out how the hell to play it. I pressed every key on the keyboard, and the only thing I could figure out was how to jump. The numeric pad's 0. That's not awkward or anything. Well, I finally looked up a few things, and although I couldn't find a manual, GameFAQs had a cheat that said to press a few keys along with F1, F2, and F3. So after pressing those, out of curiosity, I figured out the controls. So here's how it works. You can use the numeric 0, or insert if that works any better for you, to jump. The arrow keys move Kevin. You press F1 to pick up traps, F2 to switch between any of the 3 you might have on hand, and F3 to place the active trap. Overall, it's not really a bad control system, but after playing games with the WASD keys, or even old school ones where the arrow keys control Alt and space, this just feels off. So here's how this one works. You have a set amount of time to run between all rooms and place as many traps as possible. Once that time limit elapses, Marv and Harry storm the house, looking for Kevin. If you are found, the game ends. I'd like to show you more of the game, but I got caught within seconds, and there's no life counter. If you get caught, the game ends, and if you want to play again, you have to start placing traps again. Personally, I would have loved an option to skip that and maybe go with an option to replay using the traps you already set. I didn't feel like waiting another 10 minutes or so, just running around setting the traps again. This game is another one I'd pass on. The gameplay isn't that exciting, and the graphics are a bit choppy, especially when it comes to the movement. In addition, when you leave a room, there's a slight delay between when you press the button to leave the room and when the next one loads. So if you hit too much at once, you might leave the room and then re-enter it, since the game seems to remember your button presses. So yeah, Home Alone on DOS? It's not worth the small download. So now that those are down, I have 4 Home Alone 2 games to talk about. Since I'm talking about DOS games, I may as well move on to that one first. Again, it's not one that I can really talk about much because this game sucks, perhaps more so than the first. Perhaps maybe I didn't give it enough of a chance, but I couldn't because the first thought I had was, WTF? The game starts with Kevin approaching trash cans with flashing lids. The controls are identical to the first DOS game, so at least that was easy to figure out. But I could barely get anywhere, because after a few seconds, Marv comes out of nowhere and starts chasing you. Of course, he runs faster, so it doesn't take long before he does reach you. If either him or Harry grab you, it's back to the beginning. Clearly, the flashing objects are weapons you can grab, but I'll be honest, the control scheme isn't the best for a game that looks like it would be a fast-paced game. And if you can't get around the controls, playing the game is impossible. So overall, don't bother with this one either. And bonus points for the game telling you to have a better luck next time when you quit. Bastards. Next up, the Game Boy port of Home Alone 2. Home Alone 2 seems to be pretty universal in its ports. The Game Boy port is probably the weakest of the three I've played. Graphically, it's not bad. The backgrounds have some nice detail to them. Kevin still doesn't look like he was wearing a shirt, and even stranger when standing still, he looks pretty overweight. Strange. The only other thing I've noticed from this is the jumping. It just feels a little floaty. Not to say that's a bad thing, but I just need to mention it. Other than these points though, the game is pretty similar to the NES version, at least from what I could tell. Overall though, it's just simply playable. This NES version of Home Alone 2 is essentially the same thing, but updated with 16-bit graphics. In addition, coins like to fly out of random spots, helping to increase your score. Other than that, it's the exact same game as the 8-bit version. And I know I've seen stupid shit kill me in the NES version, but the fact that a key laying on the ground or a mop bucket has the potential to end Kevin's life, it just bugs the hell out of me. Other than that, there's really nothing worth saying. But if you do want to play one of the Home Alone 2 games that resembles the style for some reason, this is definitely the one to play. Finally, we move on to the last game of this week's miniseries, Home Alone 2 on the Genesis. This one is a completely different game from the other Home Alone 2 games. Well, other than that pathetic DOS version. This one starts with Kevin in an airport. It's another action platformer, and this is a bit strange. Kevin has unlimited ammo and has to traverse through the stage, smacking baseballs off the foreheads of businessmen. One thing I noticed is that the music is pretty catchy. The graphics aren't so bad either. Might he be playing a good Home Alone game? Well, it's definitely not the worst I've played, but there are a few things that make it far from a perfect game. For one, that slingshot constantly flashing on the status screen. Took me a few lives to figure out, but it's flashing to tell you that you're missing those pieces. See, your secondary weapons have to be assembled from 3 sections. Once you find them, you get a much more powerful shot. There's several weapons that I've found, but truthfully, other than trajectory, I couldn't tell much of a difference. I did make it to the second level, but this is where I stopped. I couldn't figure out where to go since it's like a huge maze. I'm assuming I just needed to find the correct chute to fall down, but I couldn't be bothered. This is because there are a lot of cheap deaths here. There are small little lifts that would bring you upwards, and if you don't get off quickly, you can be crushed by the ceiling, resulting in death. I may give this one more of a chance at some point though, because shockingly, I found myself enjoying it. And I think that's it. So what do I think is the best Home Alone game? Although the 2 Genesis games are actually fairly good, I think I have to go with the original Home Alone on the SNES. And yes, I'm aware that I'm probably missing a few other Home Alone games. Like I think there's one on PS2, but released only in Europe if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, for now, I'm done. I've played enough Home Alone games and I'm ready to move on to something new next year. But in reality, what do I recommend instead of playing these games? Watch the first 2 movies. Seriously. But anyway, have a Merry Christmas and or a Happy Holiday Season. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.